Let us pray. Almighty God, we bow down before Thee in humble obedience and dependence. We pray Thee, grant us the grace to respect each other this day in all our consultations, that our deliberations today shall take place in the spirit of mutual trust, so that we as leaders shall lead our country on the path of peace and shall find solutions for issues and problems facing us. Grant us the mercy, O Lord, that we shall today also honor Thy name in all we think, do, and say. Almighty God, we pray Thee, bless our land and all its people. This all we pray in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Let's affirm. I solemnly affirm that I will be faithful to the Republic of Namibia and its people, and I solemnly promise to uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Namibia to the best of my ability. Please be seated. Welcome back to the colleague who had been, because of COVID, sitting bedside. I hope all are in order and no complaint unless the situation change again. I said, you don't hear, put these things. I'm welcoming the colleague who were the other side, and I said, I hope it will remain like that unless the COVID has changed again the situation. With that, today is Thursday. Can I have a concurrent of the House just to start with the item on the agenda? Because today we are going to hear the response of by the official opposition to the budget. Can we? Can we? I'm asking, or can we just? Can we? Okay. That's done. Chief Whip, that's done. The Secretary will read the first order of the day. Oh, Sabah, yeah. Report of Standing and Select Committee, other reports and papers, notices of other reports and papers. I recognize Honorable Deputy Minister of Justice. Finance. Deputy Minister, Justice doesn't have a deputy. Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Maureen Hindamwene. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I lay upon the table reports of the Auditor General of the accounts of 1. National Assembly for the financial year ended 31st March 2020. Number 2, Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and SME Development for the financial year ended 31st March 2020. 3, the Ministry of Safety and Security for the financial year ended 31st March 2020. 4, Ministry of Environment and Tourism for the financial year ended 31st March 2020. Number 5, Municipality of Otjiwarongo for the financial year ended 30th June 2019. The National Planning Commission for the financial year ended 31st March 2020. Number 7, the National Road Safety Council for the financial year ended 31st March 2020. Number 8, the Department of Transport of the Ministry of Works and Transport for the financial year ended 31st March 2020, and the Social Security Commission, Maternity Leave and Sick Leave and Death Benefit Employee Compensation Fund, and the Development Fund for the financial year ended 29th February 2020. I so move, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Yes, please table the report. Any other reports? I recognize Honorable Minister of Mines and Energy, Honorable Tommy Avendo.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I lay upon the table the annual report of the Electricity Control Board for the year 2021, and I so move.
Yeah, please table the report. Any other reports and papers? Notices of questions? I recognize Honorable Ganani.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable members, Honorable Deputy Speaker, I crave for your indulgence to ask an urgent oral question to the Minister of Mines and Energy, Honorable Tom Malwendo.
How urgent is the question, and in terms of which way?
Honorable,
I'm asking the person who...
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I do not stand up here and ask an urgent oral question if it does not have implications of urgency.
Can you...
Yeah, Honorable Deputy Speaker, thank you very much for your indulgence. Honorable Minister, we are hearing a number of versions from the state that are very worrisome. That the state is saying the oil that is discovered in Namibia does not belong to Namibians. Whereas our constitution, under Article 100, speaks very clearly on the natural resource. Who determined the agency? Not you, the Deputy Speaker. Article 100 says each and every resource, onshore, offshore, found within the territorial presence of Namibia is a resource of this country. Now, therefore, I want to ask this question. Surely there is a contractual arrangement signed between the companies that are drilling. We are seeing quite very worrisome. The president is invited to Qatar to be explained that the Qataris have found oil in Namibia. Clearly there is an example today in Malawi where a mine is found. 900 million as an example, 900 million would be made from this mine in a period of 15 years, but Malawi would get only 45 million on royalties, and everybody think that there is no problem with that. Now when you have a president of a country and senior government leaders telling their own sovereigns, their own citizens, that a resource found in your country is not theirs, I want to ask the minister, will you make available the contract that is entered between those that are exploring and drilling oil and the Namibian government, if there is any, to make it public for us to ascertain ourselves from an international trade law perspective what is agreed, where a country's leadership would tell their own membership, their own population, that what is found in your country is not yours. Will the minister avail these contracts for us to be able to study them as legislature?
Yeah, that question is not urgent. No, it's not urgent. It's not urgent. You can put it in writing. Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you.
No, withdraw the statement. Withdraw it. Why do you say Swako Kambashu? No, you say it. Honorable Sebeba, please. Please. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Out to strike. Go out to strike. Okay, please, Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Venani, if you were in the House last week, Wednesday, when I made a ministerial statement, I did confirm that indeed the oil discovered is our oil. It is our oil. It couldn't be otherwise. With regard to the contract signed, so far there's no production agreement signed yet. Now that the discovery is made, we are now in the second phase when we need to start now negotiating the production agreement. That will then, of course, be signed between the government and the investors. So I hope the answer clarifies the issue.
Okay. I recognize Honorable Ndinda.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I give notice that on Thursday, the 31st of March, I shall ask the Minister of Urban and Rural Development the following. Towards the end of 2021, the Helau Nafidi Town Council took a resolution to auction off some of the 65 low-cost houses built by the Town Council during the 2017-2018 financial year to address the housing shortages in the town. The auctioning of these low-cost houses was sanctioned by the fact that the houses were of such poor quality that they rapidly dilapidated and developed dangerous cracks which makes them inhospitable for human occupation. This particular housing project by the Helau Nafidi Town Council was nothing short of squandering of public funds in the most intolerable and irreversible manner, and no one has been held accountable for this wastage since then. What is even more worrisome is that around 55 of these houses do not have access to electricity and water. The Town Council decided to auction off some of these houses in order to avoid the financial implications associated with renovating these houses. The Town Council argued that auctioning off some of the houses would afford residents of the town an opportunity to acquire their own homes at a much lower rate. However, Honorable Deputy Speaker, no houses have been auctioned off to the residents as of yet. I therefore ask the Honorable Minister the following. Is the Honorable Minister aware of this wastage of taxpayers' money by the Helau Nafidi Town Council? If the Honorable Minister is aware, what has the Ministry done to ensure that the Helau Nafidi Town Council is held accountable for this wastage? Last but not least, Honorable Minister, there is a widely held view by the residents of Helau Nafidi that the planned auctioning of these dilapidated houses by the Town Council only stands to benefit a select few elites at the expense of ordinary residents who actually need these low-cost houses. Is it not prudent that the Ministry considers subsidizing the Town Council with capital to renovate these houses rather than selling them to these elements at the expense of the deserving residents? I so move, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Please table the notice of question. Notice of motions. Notices of motions. Message from the head of state. Ministerial statement. Ministerial statement. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Resumption of debate on second reading appropriation bill.
When this assembly adjourned on Thursday, the 24th of February 2022, the question before the assembly was a motion by the Honorable Minister of Finance that the bill be read a second time. Honorable Ndinda adjourned the debate on behalf of Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith has now the floor. You have now the floor. Yes, please. Oh, happy birthday. No one. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, can we set a time? Yeah. Yes, you have the floor now.
5 seconds.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Before I start, I just want to give a glance.
Yeah,
to
30
this
minutes,
House.
eh? Yeah. Yeah, proceed. It's enough.
Yeah. A glance of the budget. Namely, the GDP is 197.5 billion, which is an increase from 187 billion, which is 5.6% nominal increase. Revenue is 59.7 billion, which is an increase from 53.4 billion, which represent 11.8%. Expenditure, 70.8 billion, which is an increase from 69.7 billion, 1.6%. The deficit, 11.1 billion, which is 5.6 of GDP, but 18.6 of revenue, nearly 1/5. Now, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Members, the statement by the Honourable Minister of Finance that this appropriation bill has as its theme, and I quote, "a better future for the youth," is something that nobody in this August House could possibly have a problem with. It is something we surely all agree is long overdue, with half of our young people remaining unemployed. Guided by the projects listed by the Honourable Minister, I calculated roughly that the total additional spent on targeted youth development will come to around 650 million Namibian dollars in the 2022-23 fiscal year. This sounded almost unbelievable, given that education in general gets about 1/4 of the total budget allocation. I was seized by this glaring anomaly. What sense is there in talking about the youth's future when the figures shout so loudly against any meaningful advancement for young people? If we accept that education is a right, not only merely a development factor, it's a right, then it makes sense to allocate such a large slice of the total resource envelope to the key input for bringing every young Namibian to his or her full potential. But when we consider those services and projects that specifically target only the youth, we find that these allocations make up only a tiny fraction of the government's total expenditure, even of the expenditure allocated under the votes whose sole mandate is to educate and develop our youth. Now, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Members, let us look at the targeted youth spend in greater detail. Adding all the obvious and the listed youth programs, and even including the extra budgetary support from the German government, I got to my figure of around 650 million Namibian dollars. When I checked the documentation, I was astonished to find that this is broadly double the allocation for Vote 27, which is the Sport, Youth and National Service vote, at 331 million, which in turn is marginally higher than the allocation in previous years. But it is higher only for this year, Note, it's higher only for this year. As of 2023, the vote reverts to around 270 million, which is more in line with the regular former allocations of about 250 million per year. So this is just a one-off thing that the government is concerned about youth. Only this year they get that little bit more. Does this mean that additional appropriations for the youth in a year where the budget theme pivots on youth issues is only 320 million more than in previous budgets? I sincerely hope not, because then the budget theme is just a big joke, a lie as the other, by now outdated lies that are perpetuated in the budget every year. But I will come back to those popular fabrications later and point them out to you one by one. At this point, it is more important that we put youth spend in context so that we can form a picture of how seriously the budget theme must be taken. Perhaps it is just another shallow concept, plucked out of thin air to try and make the budget process appear credible. Since 2010, the Ministry of Finance has established a solid reputation for inventing fancy acronyms in and around the budgets, and then to forget them just as quickly. Take, for instance, TPEC. Does anybody in this assembly still remember what it stands for? I will remember you. Targeted Intervention Program for Employment and Youth Economic Growth. Employment and economic growth, not youth. Now, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Members, turn to page 15. I hope you have that document. It should be on your computers. Of the budget statement. And go to the third bullet on that page. What do we see there? I quote, targeted interventions will be undertaken over the MTEF to create housing opportunities across the country. Unquote. Now let us consider the 2010 TIPEC. And we ask, where is the employment and where is the economic growth? After we have spent 14 billion on that program, where is it? The fact that both have evaporated indicates that we must not expect too much from the fleeting undertakings in the current budget. Don't take it serious. It will not happen. After all, we have become so accustomed to a flawed budget process that we fail to notice how feeble the scaffolding is on which a very large part of the economy rests. This brings me to the issue of just how credible the claimed additional spend to promote the youth is. Now, deficit on borrowing. Let us give the Ministry and the Planning Commission the benefit of the doubt and assume that the youth will receive at least 650 million, more through various budgeting channels. This is on top of the customary expenditure on education and youth development. How does this compare to other cardinal expense items and to the main deficit benchmarks? That is the question. How does it compare? Honourable Speaker, this year, Namibia will pay domestic and international creditors, note, some 9.2 billion in interest, not including the value of the bonds that are due for redemption. That's not included. This amount constitutes about 15.4% of all domestic revenue, as indicated on page 21 of the fiscal strategy. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, But here is the kicker. Just listen. The Honourable Minister lists these figures and ratios in an almost bland way, as if there are no consequences to overspending and overborrowing. But let me explain to you what the practical implications actually are. First, the 15% of our revenue that we spend on debt servicing is some 5% higher than the IMF benchmark of 10% for low and middle income countries, and we are one of them. In real terms, this means that the government's total debt for operational expenditure must not exceed 10% of its revenue, as simple as that, not more than 10%. We already breached this benchmark back way in 2016, when it went up to 11%, and since then it has increased every year. We didn't miss 1 year. You will also remember that for several years, the so-called debt ceiling as a percentage of GDP was increased hastily every year by Cabinet. First, to make provision for total debt exceeding 35%, then 40%, then 45%, and so on, every year. Eventually, it became a non-issue, and now we blindly accept the fact that we are on our way to 75%. Can you imagine? We are nearly there. In the process, we ignore the extensive literature and sovereign debt, which clearly shows that the budget balance becomes less and less likely above the 75% threshold, and almost unfinanceable when we approach 90%. Then we are gone. We completely ignore the fact that at some point we shall default on our debt if we continue to borrow at such an alarming rate without a commensurate increase in overall economic activity. I want to put that in plain language. In contrast to the highfalutin, obscure terminology and phrases employed by the Honourable Minister to hide some ugly truth. Honourable Speaker, Honourable Members, the first ugly truth is that the pretended focus on the youth, this budget, is all nonsense and political talk. It serves no purpose, and it certainly does not promote the cause of the youth. And when I look at the position of women and farmers, many of whom are also women, I see a similar picture emerging. It's coming. There is much talk about boosting, promoting, supporting this and that scheme. But when I crunch the numbers, a paltry scenario becomes evident. Then the truth comes out. So what are the practical implications for the youth from the government's consistent overspending and overborrowing? What is the practical implications? Let's look at that. Overshooting the debt threshold robs the youth of their future. That is what it is. The most important impact is actually fairly simple to calculate. The 9.2 billion that we are going to spend to pay the interest constitute 15.4% of domestic revenue, as stated by the Honourable Minister and as indicated in the budget. If we were to get back to the 10% IMF benchmark, which we have to, it would mean that we have to spend, listen now, we have to spend 3.3 billion less on interest. But unfortunately, we cannot do this because a very large part of the debt has been borrowed already. And it is part of the budget process to calculate how much more we are going to borrow this year. It's not the end of the road, we still have to borrow more. In very simple terms, it spells out that we are throwing 3.3 billion in the water every year. And that this wastage on a grand scale will only increase as time passes. Now consider the 650 million additional you've spent, and it becomes obvious that it cannot nearly compare to the excess interest we pay above the 10% threshold. In fact, this youth spend, listen carefully, this youth spend is a mere 1.1% of the total expenditure, while the 3.3 billion that we have to pay in interest is slightly more than 5.5% of total revenue. How does that sound for you, of mismanagement of our finances? I hope that this simple comparison demonstrates to you what a big farce the budget theme is, playing the youth high. Perhaps it is more opportune that we talk about reimagining. That is actually what it is. We are imagining things that's not possible, instead of reimaging. What are we reimaging? We are certainly not going to reimage the youth's future prospects if we continue to pilfer our future resources, which were supposed to make provision for a better future for our youth. In my mind, the future looks less promising by the year, and the only way that government can attempt to whitewash the gross neglect of youth investment is by inventing a bogus budget theme like this one, and then trying to convince the youth that they are acting in their best interest. I hope the youth's eyes are open and see what trick the government, the ruling party, is playing. Popular fabrications. Earlier in my response, when I expounded the fallacy of TPEC, I promised that I would revisit the popular false perceptions that are repeated year after year, even 20 years on, but which I suspect ordinary Namibians, in particular the youth, have stopped believing. You can't be fooled all the time. Arguably, the biggest lie, or at least the one that is most often repeated as if it is gospel, we find early in the budget statement. On page 11, the Honourable Minister promises us, in clause 32, and I quote, at such revenue mobilization levels, read together with a high ratio of public debt, it remains imperative for aggregate expenditure over the MTEF to remain fairly contained so as to safeguard fiscal sustainability and stabilize the growth in public debt, unquote. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, it beats me how somebody can lie so blatantly to our faces and expect us to believe this drivel. As I mentioned earlier, the Honourable Minister is fond of obfuscating the pertinent issues by hiding behind floral language. But despite his best efforts, he cannot hide the fact that what he states is not true. You can't hide it. What he states there will not happen. It is mere talk for the sake of making smart noises. It has not happened to date, and it will not happen during the medium term. We are long beyond the point of fiscal sustainability. Long beyond. We have erased all fiscal space that we had as recently as 2015. We have destroyed that space. And it is a mathematical certainty that we are on our way to a default. We are there. nearly. When that painful juncture arrives, listen carefully. When we arrive there, when we default, we will have to accept emergency borrowing from the IMF. We will have no choice. Emergency borrowing. And we will gradually lose control over our own finances. We will lose control, like many other countries. The examples in the third world are legion. And there is no logical reason why we will escape this inevitable outcome. That is made for us already. And if you want local examples of what happens to organizations when they have come to the end of their credit, if you want local ones, just think of the inglorious shutdown of Air Namibia. That's in the making for us. I invite you furthermore, for as long as we do not fix the obvious shortcomings in our governance structure, if we don't fix that, there is no way that we will be able to turn the debt ship around, let alone contain the fallout from excess debt. We will be a goner. Please know that. This, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Members, brings me to another popular lie. And this one is found on page 12 of the budget statement. In clause 38, the Honourable Minister states, and I quote, "The elevated public debt remains a primary concern in the medium term." Again, what a load of nonsense. If this was true, we would have started applying the brakes already in 2016. But then the government chose to listen to its own deluded advisors instead of lending an ear to the many experts in the private sector who sounded loud alarm bells about the way the government's finances were going at that time. I think at the time most members of SWAPO still believed that we could be bailed out by the Chinese government, regardless of what mess we created in our own economy. We can mess up as we want. Chinese will bail us out. That has also proven to be a lie over the past 6 years. The support is there. The other day, Honourable Linda asked the Minister of Finance that question, and the Deputy Minister tried to answer it, not very convincingly. The support is there, granted, but it has come with some very thick and strong strings, putting us deeper in debt to the Chinese. Even the Deputy Ministers could not make that calculation. She was not knowing what she was talking. And debts, and the problem is debts must be paid. Another fallacy.
Which is the correct information?
Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Yes. Proceed.
Another fallacy. Honourable Deputy Speaker, another fallacy that is so often propagated by our financial authorities is that the development, listen carefully, don't make noise, it will not solve the problem. It will not solve the problem. Nakuni must still pay those people who wrote his assignments when he was at university. He didn't pay them. Honourable Deputy Speaker, another fallacy is so often propagated by our financial authorities is that the Development Bank of Namibia can and will apply play a significant role in financing small and medium enterprises, owned and operated by women and by young entrepreneurs. Now, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I invite you to find out for yourself that the funding that is available to SMEs, just listen, is taxed with a hefty 15% interest on loans against 7 to 8% of the private banks. The Development Bank, which is a government bank, lent money to 15% to SMEs. How is it possible? Ask yourself, how can any small, ask yourself,
It's not a black and white issue.
ask yourself,
Time, speaker, time.
Don't make things a racial issue. It's not
Can we listen, please?
Time, no, deputy speaker, time. You ate the 5 minutes, time.
ask,
everything is not a black.
ask yourself, Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members, ask yourself, how can any small business survive at such punitive interest rates? If often these small businesses battle to meet even the most basic payments, at least for the first 5 years of their existence. How can they pay 15% interest? It's not possible. They are bankrupt before they started. It is no surprise, listen, it is no surprise that SME owners have shunned this funding window. As even the Minister elegantly put it, and I quote him, "We have noted poor appetite and limited uptake at these debt windows." You find it on page 13, clause 40, bullet 5. The Minister says it himself. There was no interest in taking up that money. Who will do it? Which businessman? Consuming the future to survive the present. Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members, it is a pretentious farce to offer any economic remedies through deployment of budget allocations when the fundamental ratios are grossly skewed and have been so for a very long time. When we first ran into serious fiscal trouble in 2016, the Ministry's knee-jerk reaction was to pilfer the development budget in an attempt to paper over the government's enormous wage bill to cover up. This flaw in the government's financial model lies at the bottom of all those and will continue to undermine all attempts at productive investment in the broader economy if it remains unfixed. If we don't fix that bill, it will kill us, as it already 90% did. Through budget gymnastics, it is made to appear that the wage bill constitutes just under half of total expenditure. Can you believe it? This is just a trick trying to play it on us. And that is that the wage bill is about 48.5%. But again, this is false. It's not true. If it does not consider the full personnel and cost impact of CMAS, from housing subsidies and from car and travel allowances. That has not been calculated into this. It's been hidden. As the previous Minister of Finance pointed out in this House, some of you who were here will remember, the real human resource demand on the revenue is closer to 72%. And that has not changed despite all, dare I say, false assurances to the contrary, telling us always stories. for as long as personnel expenditure consumes almost 3/4 of the current resource envelope. For so long, the development budget will remain a joke. Take for instance, the 3.6 billion.
They were making noise.
No. Can I listen? I'm just talking to the person who is.
They were making noise.
Can we listen to one another?
Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Can we listen to one another?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Speaker phoned me personally and said I have this whole afternoon to speak.
Yes.
He told me personally.
Personally. No, I emphasize personally, or it was decided elsewhere.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I have the permission of the Speaker to speak this whole afternoon.
The Minister of Open and Land speech was amazing.
I'm sorry, I was not there. Can somebody else
Call the speaker.
No, you stand up.
Just go.
From anyone. No, any chief whip from other political party.
To do what?
Other political party. Can you confirm that?
To do what? Yes. They are confirming, yes. Yes. The defeats.
No, there's no feedback now.
Was it?
What do you need?
You have all the money, we have all the time. You have all the money.
That I was not present at that meeting. That's why I want to confirm. Yeah, the speaker is not here. The benefit of doubt. No, it's okay. You can talk.
Thank you.
I don't know. Yeah.
There's always a first stage.
I cannot, I'm in dilemma now because the speaker was present.
What is that?
When the President of Government next week for 3 days, it was nothing.
Yeah.
3 days, Amy, 3 days.
Can you proceed? Proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Speaker. It's not a surprise that the other side don't want to hear what I have to say. Why are you like that?
Why do you want to interrupt? We can still have tea.
Honourable members. Honourable members.
Can I
You
continue?
know why you have ended, eh?
As long as personnel expenditure consumes.
Honourable Smith, can we break for tea and proceed where you ended? So again. Okay, be seated, please. Yeah. I have to apologize to everybody for what happened. It's just maybe lack of communication. Now we proceed. I understand that there was a meeting of the Chief Whip, which the Speaker was also present, to give the privilege to the Shadow Minister to speak, but not the whole day. I'm hoping that an informality should be formalized. Formalized in the whether in the form of a motion or amendment of the rules. But right now we just proceed because the Speaker is not here. But not the whole day. Not the whole day. Honorable Smith, you have the floor. Kindly start where you ended. Thank you.
Start over again.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I just want to say I will never make misuse of a situation. It was said to me by the Speaker, and I'm just keeping to that.
What are you saying?
So,
what did you say?
You never misuse.
Yeah. I will continue.
Put on your earphones.
Can I speak? Can I continue?
Yeah, continue where you ended.
For as long as personnel expenditure consumes almost 3/4 of the current resource envelope, for so long, the development budget will remain a joke. Take, for instance, the 3.6 billion allocated to infrastructure and compare it to the 3.3 billion we have to pay on our debt above the IMF threshold. I'm asking you, what infrastructure can be financed with 3.6 billion when our backlog is so huge and the needs of our communities so neglected? What can you do with 3.6 billion? Where the Honourable Minister says near the end of his statement, and I quote, "The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic found our fiscal affairs in a precarious position." He is at least telling the truth. But when immediately following that remark, he says, "It is due to so many factors outside our control," he is fibbing again. It's not true. Our situation is man-made since 2015, 2016. Although he does not refer to any green shoots, which never materialized in any case, he is convinced that there is some light in the end of the tunnel. I completely disagree. There is no light. The only reason why we can continue as a government and as a country is because the capital market has been very forgiving and allowed us to continue our existence by lending the government even more money, digging the grave deeper and wider. Sometimes the budget is even amusing. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, I would also like to point out some persistent idiosyncrasies that follow us budget by budget. One such regular budget item is the reference to the so-called sin taxes on tobacco and alcohol. As far as I can see, there is nothing to any of these consumer items that differentiates them from any other consumer item. Separating them for special tax treatment is a budget relic that borders onto ridiculous. It would make far more sense, and I want to address this to the Minister of Mines, to explain the myriad of taxes built into the price of petrol and diesel, and explain to us how these will be adjusted or even abandoned. That would constitute real practical budgeting if we do that, with real outcomes. Not the nonsense about who drinks and smoke what. It is. That's a fact. Equally, there's no other word for that. Equally ridiculous is the VAT zero. Just listen, Honourable Minister. Equally ridiculous is the VAT zero rating of sanitary pads, attended only to score cheap points with the young people. That's all. Sanitary pads should be made available free of charge if you want to do so. Free of charge through the network of clinics if the government is really serious that school-going girls must not lose school days for biological reasons. If you are serious, just make it free. And what about contraception? If we want to include all these ridiculous items for political reasons, sanitary pads, what? Why not zero contraceptives? Or better still, make these also available free of charge through the Ministry of Health and Social Services clinics countrywide. Also make that, seeing that we are busy with this. The way we can meaningfully prevent unwanted pregnancies among teenage or school-going girls and ensure that they complete their education before getting married and starting families. Would this not mean much more for the youth, where it matters, at the educational level, to help them there, than to bring a sponsored soccer team to Parliament? What use is that? And what about basic income grant, Honourable Speaker? If we bring our debt under control, 1/3 of the 3.3 billion that we wasted on interest at present is all that is needed to put this crucial form of social support into place. The same applies to absolutely essential but neglected, or should I say shunned structure, like the National Pension Fund, which has been on the cards for more than 25 years and has never been materialized. That is an important thing that we need. When talking about the youth, we are addressing our own future. We are not, but that discourse must be honest. Not the shallow, false, expedient narrative that is exploited for political gains. This budget theme is just for political gain. The youth of today are the people that will need a national pension fund in the 30 years from now. If we carry on at the same rate, I am sad to tell the youth that there will be no pension fund when they come to the end of their working life. They will sit on the streets. Now, question is, where are the women? 32 years after independence, the vast majority of women and girls are still facing a bleak future. Their guarantee of a solid education is undermined by a flawed budget, by a substandard educational framework, and by a pervasive lack of even the most basic facilities. The moment one moves into the rural areas where the majority of our children attend school, then you see the plight of the women. When talking about the youth, it is axiomatic that one first talks about women. It is futile to offer all sorts of hollow undertakings ostensibly for our youth and young, when not first securing the position of those members of our nation who build the foundation upon which all further youth development rests. You can't solve the problem at the top, you must solve it at the bottom, and that is with the women. Similar to this, to his colleagues, His Excellency the President is fond of telling us that education is the great equalizer. How noble. If he really believes this, then let him explain to us the disastrous results of the majority of learners who must go on to their final school year. Is the government implying that the matric qualification is no longer important or reserved only for a few people who will go to fill the professions in future? This is a perpetuation of inequality, and it is glaring obvious. Now, our dear Minister of Finance comes with this ridiculous notion of zero rating sanitary pads for girls. How far can one's intentions be removed from reality? It is not the VAT on the sanitary pads that keep schoolgirls out of school. It is the basic affordability of the items in the first place, not the VAT. And the further a girl's village is away from a town or city, the more difficult it becomes to find sanitary pads in a local shop. It is simply not a priority item for most rural shopkeepers. And when they are indeed available, the very people who need them cannot afford them.
Yes.
So what has that to do with that? So telling us all with a straight face that sanitary pads will be zero rated is in my mind a bit of a sick joke. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, then there are the thousands of women who have to take care of households but without a proper income. In almost all the cases, this is due to a lack of education or training for a vocation they can apply to generate their own incomes. Where in the budget, show me that, where in the budget do you see allocations to put these women in a better position? There's no money for it. Sure, the health vote gets a very big allocation, but healthy mothers still need to work somewhere or do something to put bread on the table every day. And one can argue that the massive education allocation helps all women to develop their children's full potential. But this argument would only hold water if the educational results were in line with the expenditure, what we spent on it. That is not the case. As it stands now, it reeks as of massive wastage, and it does very little to help either women or children. Most of the work to support and advance women is done by non-governmental organizations. Now it beats me why the government is so keen to malign the work of NGOs or become threatening very fast when NGOs dare make a political statement, while at the same time government is failing to do much for the plight of the women. They leave it to NGOs. As a rule of thumb, the government continually wants to interfere with the private sector or act as a role player in the private sector. But at social level, where women are most dependent on support, the government's actions are feeble, producing no results that change the lives of Namibian women for the better. Another aspect where budgetary funding is inadequate is in preventing gender violence. It is such a sad irony that the overweight budget allocations to defense give us a defense force to fight a non-existent and unlikely war. But it cannot prevent the daily domestic war on our women and girls. Other examples that should be mentioned in this context are the following. Early childhood development, which is also driven mainly by NGOs. Vocational training for women, where the number of female apprentices is very low. No provision for young girls who do not complete training but want to continue at a later stage, for instance, after childbirth or raising a family. There's no provision made for those women. Nothing. And what about farmers? Honourable Speaker, honourable members, we can run a competition to entertain ourselves and in the process find out which is the most chaotic ministry. I suspect that the Agriculture Ministry, apart from gender, will easily occupy one of the 3 slots. One is reserved for gender. Farmers in general face 3 important issues, namely access to financing, access to production inputs, and access to markets.
Point of order. Yeah, point of order. Point of order.
Yeah, all I need is the Honorable to repeat what he said. What is it for gender? I did not get
That
him.
gender doesn't get enough money.
Just to repeat that sentence.
Gender doesn't get
Thank
enough
you.
money for
Let me get it. Well,
Yeah. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
just that sentence is fine for me.
When working through the voluminous budget documentation, in particular the biggest document, which is the estimates of revenue, income and expenditure, that thick one. By vote, an impressive picture emerges, I must say, of the Ministry of Agriculture. Water and Land Reform form a budget that is confounding in detail. You can't believe it, it's very, very detailed. I think it's about the best budget. Why then the agriculture failing the very people who are supposed to make a living from the land? Why? Honourable Speaker, honourable members, do yourself a favour and meticulously work through the allocations of vote 37 and 38. They start at page 495 and run to page 535. So it's only 41 pages of figures you need to digest to see what is going on in agriculture. And seeing that so many of you are involved in farming, in one way or another, I strongly advise you that it is not a waste of time to work through that section of the budget. Then you will see in what situation that ministry is. What is immediately obvious is that the Agriculture Ministry is beset by an unbalanced budget where staff remuneration depletes the biggest slice of the budget, even before a single truck has moved to transport animals or fresh produce to the land or to the markets. The problem here is that the commercial structure the ministry is trying to establish are not functioning. I need to ask the minister why the government's green schemes are not working when they are situated in areas where sufficient water is, while right next to them the private sector is turning out profits from their agronomic investments. There they make money. But the green schemes is a bottomless pit. It is ironic that the project and progress reports that are part of each vote and which explain sometimes in great detail the rationale for particular expense items fail to make a significant impact at ground level. Why is that happening? Can the Minister of Agriculture maybe tell us, or also some of the other ministries? Again, I suspect the main reason is that the vast majority resources allocated to the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform are taken up by salaries, and that very little of money gets spent as investments to enable farmers to overcome the 3 obstacles I've mentioned earlier. There's no money for that. No money. I couldn't find it. If you can find it, please let me know. There are many employees in the ministry, and I'm often shocked when I visit the region to see how many ministry vehicles moving in the region, running up and down. But then I'm equally shocked when I see that nothing tangible is being done to help the farmers. You see nothing is happening, but you see their cars running all over. I do not see trucks that distribute production inputs, nor do I see trucks moving in the opposite direction, taking the produce to the market. And as we talk to local farmers in every region, the one complaint that keeps surfacing all the time is that they cannot get loans or subsidies through the normal channels. There's no money to help them. Unless you are a connected person or have a full-time paid job somewhere else, your chances of getting some financing are very limited, if not none. It seems to me that this is more important to continue to pay salaries than to achieve actual results by making sure that boreholes are drilled and pumps are working. I've been told in some regions there's even no more money to buy fuel. No car can run. But the offices are overcrowded, paying salaries but no work done. Helping farmers to get access to financing, production, inputs and markets will not happen by itself. It must be driven by a body of individuals who are tasked to make sure that farmers can plow and plant, water and grow, and eventually get their crops to a place where they can be sold. The government agencies that are supposed to support farmers are dysfunctional. Both the production and the marketing side are impaired, often resulting in farmers growing subpar products fit only for the informal markets. You may say that there is nothing wrong with this, and that the informal markets also demand fresh produce. But the reality is that a farmer cannot make a profit by serving only small and informal markets. They must get to the formal markets where they can make money. Professional bona fide farmers need to go big, and for this they need the support of the ministry, which must be able to execute its functions effectively by using the money it is allocated in the budget to help those farmers, and not use 90% to pay salaries. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, it is useless for the ministry to undermine the operation of Meatco, for instance, and then expect cattle farmers to be able to compete in international markets. Similarly, we cannot tolerate the wastage through AMTA. That must stop. And the disbanded AgriBushDev. And then expected farmers to help us on that never-ending quest for becoming food self-sufficient. In the same vein, what is the sense of having a network of statutory boards that all claim to provide access to markets, but when I look at the budget expenditure, I do not find real operational support. There is nothing to help the farmers, those boards, no money for them. Also, show me the allocation for significant infrastructure investment specifically for the farmers. There's no money in that budget for infrastructure development. A borehole at $120,000 Namibia is certainly not an adequate investment in agricultural infrastructure. Definitely not. Finally, Honourable Speaker, honourable members, I want to address a glaring budget imbalance that affects us all. Elective governance, or many modern states rest on the three organs of the state comprising the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. In our case, the executive branch office. The executive branch office of the President and the office of the Prime Minister receives just over 1 billion Namibian dollars. Just for those two. Just more than $1 billion. The judiciary, comprising of the Ministry of Justice and the Office of the Judiciary, receives more than 810 million. Comprising while the legislation in the form of the National Assembly has to do with a totally inadequate 111 million Namibian dollars, comparing to 1 billion to the executive, 810 to the judiciary. The legislator, 111 million. This is why you and I, as backbenchers, fail to execute our mandate properly from a lack of funding. It is not in Namibia's interest to expect the legislator to execute its mandate with only 10% of the resources of the executive. Only 10% we are getting. Furthermore, Honourable Speaker, and members, pursuant to my previous delivery in this August House, I need to alert you to the fact that we have no say in the allocation of the National Assembly's budget. It is assigned by the compilers of the national budget. Without any consultation with us. And we are only informed of what the allocation is after it has been finalized. Never been discussed with us. Nowhere. Please note that I'm not asking for an increase in overall expenditure. On the contrary, I'm advocating a reallocation of resources. In simple terms, there is convincing evidence to reduce the allocation for the office of the President and the office of the Prime Minister without debilitating their operations in any way, and to reallocate these savings to the National Assembly. This is a technique. This is a technique the current Minister of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform is very good at, especially in his former role as Minister of Finance. He can do it. There is even a fancy academic word for it. They call it veriment. A French word to describe the legal and transparent reallocation of resources between expense items of a company's budget. This is precisely what I propose, that we take away some of the very generous portions of the executive and redirect it to the National Assembly. I mean, what does the office of the President need 102 million for, and I quote, to act in national interest and uphold the dignity of the office of the President? What does that mean? Why are we painfully aware? We are painfully aware of the so-called dignity of the office of the President. So why we need to spend 102 million to prove it is beyond me. On what is it spent?
To go to Dubai.
In the same way, I can ask the legitimate question, exactly what, other than disaster relief, does the office of the Prime Minister do? This office claims, listen carefully, this office claims it needs 14.8 million for, I quote, of efficient administrative support. What is that? For the Right Honourable Prime Minister. But then it's asking for another 58 million for various other administrative supports. 70 million for administrative support. What does that entail? Exactly Yeah. No? And
So
similar.
you have the whole
You
day.
just wait.
You have all the money of the whole day.
Similar
very
to the subversive malay of the rest of the budget process, staff remuneration also devolves most of the allocated resources with little to zero tangible results to show for the luxury of running a powerful employment agency. That's what it seems to me what they are. For several of the budget programs listed for the Office of the President and the Office of the Prime Minister, item 010, personnel expenditure. It's not me saying it, the budget saying it. Personnel expenditure amounts to 96% of the programs. Total expenditure, 96%. Explain to me what these offices can achieve or affect at operational level when 96% of their expenses go to salaries and understaff costs. 4% go to, I don't know what, to do what with it. If we vary money, 200 million from the Office of the President and 100 million from the Office of the Prime Minister, that 300 million must be given to the National Assembly. Which will be... Clearly you don't know what is our role, what is our mandate. That 300 million, that 300 million must be given to the National Assembly, which will then have a total allocation of 411. This is still considerably less than the combined 810 million of the Ministry of Justice and Office of Judiciary. But it is at least comparable to the individual allocations for each of these two institutions. Were this House better financed, I am convinced that we could have remedied many of the budget shortcomings I have listed much earlier with much less damage to our country. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, as it stands now, we are all witnesses and accomplices to a budget process that has clearly gone off the rails. Thank you.
The Secretary will read.
Someone must attend from the list.
It's just automatic. Honourable members, you have got the budget program. On Monday, who would like to adjourn the budget debate to Tuesday? Huh? Yeah, Tuesday.
Yes, maybe read out the parties also.
No. Anyone? Approve. The debate of the budget is adjourned to Tuesday. The Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Committee stage, Public Procurement Amendment Bill. Tuesday.
We have already agreed. Does the Deputy Minister of Finance move that the Assembly goes into the committee? It is moved that I will leave the chair Any objections? Who second? Agreed to. I call on the Deputy Chairperson of the whole House Committee, Nabul Kafura, to take the chair of the committee.
Sit here.
Okay.
Switch on the for that. Switch on to the one full up. It's on.
The whole House Committee has to consider the Public Procurement Amendment Bill. I put clause 1. Any discussion? Any objection? Clause 1. Yes, Honorable Nekundi.
Is that the title? Is that the title? Is that the title?
No, it will come last.
So there's no amendment.
It will come last.
Yeah, the amendment. I have it.
Yeah, not that it will come last.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope I'm in the right section. In terms of that section,
Honorable Nekundi, are you on clause 1? Clause 1.
Come chair, unfortunately, I'm dealing with the.
Yes, clause 1 of the bill.
Yeah.
That's where we are now.
The first page.
Yes, on page 2.
Page 2.
Yes.
Yes, I'm on page 2.
Yeah.
Okay. On page 2. On page 2, I made a suggestion, if so approved, accepted, the issue of the delegation of authority. Is it accepted? That the account officers must be able to delegate the authorities in order to facilitate the decentralization, in particular in this fashion, in particular, like in our fashion, the government garage.
Honorable Nekundi, which subsection of clause 1 you are referring to?
Okay, it's in terms of the amendment to section 1,
Yes.
section 1, A, B is the issue of the delegation of the delegation by the accounting officer. There you have section 1 or 1A, and then below that you have A and B. If the accounting officer is absent or if for any other reason unable to perform his or her function.
Yes, we are together.
Yes, and is there, I'm making a submission that that particular section then expand to include the accounting officers to delegate functions to the regional or for decentralization purposes, if accepted, And on the same section, that is now 1A, the next one is on 1B, where I spoke yesterday, the issue of close relatives. I'm saying there it says means a spouse, child, grandchild, parent, sibling, cousin, nephew. And I just wanted clarification. How do we understand then a cousin and nephew? I want to understand. Why can't we just end at sibling? Because my challenge I have is that when my mother's cousin is also my uncle or my aunt, I might not know their grandchildren. Now, how do I really fall in that to understand them? Will one not be found wanting if that is really not really tell to the basic understanding, knowing that who your cousins are? To end at siblings. Because cousins is big. And I give you an example here. My grandmother's sister or cousin are also my grandmothers in terms of our cultures. Now, they are grandchildren. They are also my cousins and nephews and nieces. I just want to understand, can't we end at siblings? You have your child, your spouse, child, grandchild, parent, and sibling. Then you are done. Then there is no ambiguity in terms of understanding and appreciation who those people are. Okay, I think that is. But when you also look at the principle in terms of this amendment, when we go to page 19, it speaks of the different that it talk about close relatives, friends, and associates. But here the associate and friends are not defined. But in page 19 there, in the same amendment, there is that you may not deal with your close friend, your close associate and friends may not bid in the enterprise where you are. But here they are not defined what constitutes a close relative, a close associate, and a friend. And I give an example here of some of these who were our close associates. Possibly they are still. I just want to make that submission in terms of that particular section. Committee Chair, does that, are we now only dealing with page 2, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll come for page 2.
Deputy Minister of Finance.
Yes, thank you very much, Deputy Chair of the Whole House Committee. I think on the first one that Honorable Nekundi was talking about, on clause 1B, Roman 2, it includes public entities governed by a board, local authority council, regional council, or similar governing bodies, the person acting as accounting officer of the written authority of the board, it can act. So I think that is catered for. The delegation issue. Because if you are acting, then you also, the responsibility is also delegated.
When they are unable to perform. But we have the account of the Minister of Works and Transport, but we have somebody.
Honorable Nekundi, you are not yet given
to pass this thing before we go to the procurement.
Yeah, on the issue of the decentralization on the regional, it is addressed in the regulations. So maybe we'll deal with that of the regulations. I want to also still argue that, yes, the understanding of the Act that talks about cousin is either your uncle's child, it's your cousin, it's your mother's. So I think that is clear exactly what it is. That whether in which term you consider him still your brother because it's your father's brother's child. Why this was brought in is because it really brings those conflict of interest issues. Where you don't know that the person is your cousin.
Nekundi, you are not following what the Honorable Member is.
Yeah, so I think in the event that you are not aware if it is your cousin, I think that you would not be penalized for that. But I want to suggest that we keep to the word because the drafters or the ministry has recommended that based on the challenges that are experienced in the currently. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussions before I give the floor to the Honorable Minister? Honorable, is that? No, first Honorable Dawson.
Without Honorable Deputy Chairperson of the Whole House Committee, Honorable Members, without opposing my comrade Mwende, to be honest, it will create a big loophole. Everybody will just say, if found guilty, will just say, I didn't know that this particular person is my cousin. If we have a law that says, in the event where somebody did not know that whoever is his cousin and so on, it will just create a big loophole. So we can't have a law that speaks to that.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy. Any further discussions? Honorable Dawson.
I want to I think that the point that Honorable Nekundi is making around cousin and the fluidity of that word in the extended family context, particularly in the African context, it is problematic. I agree with him. So the only way we can solve that, so I don't agree that we should delete niece and nephew and uncle and aunt, because I think those ones are quite clear in terms of biologically how we define an uncle and an aunt and a nephew and a niece. But where I think we will have a real challenge is what a cousin is in the African context particularly. So the one way to resolve that is to define what we mean by cousin perhaps. So would the Honourable Member then be okay with us defining that so that we can then list what a cousin entails, and maybe then you can include it. Otherwise, I would agree with the deletion of the word cousin.
Thank you. Honorable Toro, I saw your flight. Did you withdraw?
Yeah, I think for now.
Okay. Okay, I will now give the floor to the Deputy Minister to respond.
Yeah. Yes, I think we will take out the word cousin unless the drafters can then define the word cousin. No, niece and nephew is clear. It's your aunt's child. We will look at it. I think we will define it. I think that will solve the problem. We will define them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any objection?
Deputy Chair, I just wanted, I agree that that need to be defined comprehensively, cousin, nephew, niece, and aunt and uncle. But my other question was, when you look on page 19, if you go there, no, yes, I'm not there. I know that you're not there. I'm cognizant of that, but I just appreciate what I'm trying to say. There it says who is a close relative, and here we have relative defined here. Same sentence, associate or friend in the same sentence, but the associate and friend is not defined, but it's found in the same clause on page 19. Close relative, associate or friend is in the one sentence. It's in the one clause. However, only one of that element is defined. And it's also going to have a challenge to us here. We will be found wanting whom you might think is not a close relative, what? Associate, it might be maybe because of the characteristics, how the law will define it, and how guys are going to argue who will then constitute a associate and who is going to be referenced as a friend. That's very important.
Honorable members, please.
I'm just asking for it to be defined.
Yes. Honorable Itete.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Chair of the Whole House Committee, honorable members, with your questions that we so agree, I think we need to twist that question, Honorable Chair. I'm sorry I'm not directing the Chair, but it should be with those proposed amendments. Then we go it. But if you just ask the way you are asking now, you are asking as if it's just that way. So you must say, are we moving on? Are we so agree with those amendments, with those proposed amendments? Then we agree or disagree.
Yes, I was coming to that. Hence, there was a back and forth from Honorable Kundi and the Deputy Minister, though she was also supposed to, it's just directives, to wait until all the members have contributed and then she concludes. However, we are all in agreement in what you have just proposed. Any objection to that? Oh, sorry, Honorable Bedboy.
Deputy Chair of the Whole House Committee, I'm a little bit confused because these amendments came now from the AG, isn't it? Now, were we not supposed to be to bring it in the previous stage?
Which previous stage?
Okay, thank you.
I'll ask again, is there any objection with those amendments to clause 1? Not amendment, but a contribution, as you alluded to. We agree to? Thank you. We move to clause 2. Yeah, I put clause 2. Any discussion? Any objection? Agree to? Thank you. I put clause 3. Yes, Honorable Nekundi.
On clause 3, I look at on that page 4. There is from the top. There is a J there. Supplier means a person delivering goods. However, I would suggest on page 4.
Clause 3.
Yeah, clause 3 is page 4. Clause 3 is page 4.
Yes.
And I'm now looking at from the top there. There's a J. Under J, it says under J says the substitution of the definition of supplier of the following definition. Supplier means a person. Now, when you look in the principal definition of a person, it is not defined there. So as such, I was recommending that it must be a person or a company delivering goods.
Sorry, Honorable Nekundi, I think you move back to clause 1.
No.
We are now on clause, yes, we are on clause 3. J is part of clause 1, the one that you are referring to.
No.
Yeah, if we are having the same document. Yes.
No, Comrade Chair,
Yes.
Deputy Chair, I just want them to get understanding. When I started my contribution, I asked whether that is curtailed to page 2, and I understood it is yes. And I then says, no, I'm saying my understanding.
Yeah.
And I need then the help of the chairperson to guide, so that when I'm then doing my contribution, I'm doing it in the conformity of what is being done, correct?
The chairperson is now helping you to say, when we move to clause 2, we thought we have already exhausted clause 1.
No,
That's why we went further to say, is there any objection to the discussion? Then we agreed. When we agreed to, we have closed clause 1. So it's to say that now we still have an issue on clause 1, on J as you are referring to now.
Please,
so it means that we are now going back again.
My apology. Now I understand that the clause we are referring to is this number 2 in bold and 3 in bold.
Yeah.
Now I understand that. Can I, the indictment of the House and Chairperson, can I then go back?
Yes, please, let's move.
And then 1J. And then
Honorable Nekundi, I think we have already closed
no, it's okay.
that chapter, if I
It's
may
okay.
say so.
No, it's okay.
Because we already
No problem.
concluded.
No.
Otherwise, maybe the other option, yes, may I? The other option, may I?
Now here is a plan means a person. Now is it a juristic person or a natural person? As such, because it's not defined, I would then suggest that we insert a person or a company.
Okay.
Because it's very fundamental.
I understand your contribution, but at this stage now, since we close, can you take up the issue with the Honorable Minister? Then we can address
I'm
it.
okay, Comrade Chair.
Thank
I'm very
you
okay.
very much. We go back to clause 3. Clause 3. Any discussion on clause 3? Any objection? Agree to? I put clause 4. Any discussion? Any objection? Agree to? Oh, yes, Honorable Councillor.
Just on a point of order, because it could be a question about understanding how to read the bill when it's an amendment bill that does not have the principal act. I would suggest that instead of just saying clause 4, because everybody doesn't seem to be familiar with the practice, that you rather read the heading on top of the clause so that people can follow properly. Thank you.
Thank you for that advice. Clause 4 is under the amendment of Section 7 of Act Number 15 of 2015. Any discussions? Any objection? Agreed to. I put clause 5. It's on the amendment of section 11 of Act number 15 of 2015. Any discussion? Any objection? Agree to? I put clause 6. Amendment of section 12 of Act number 15 of 2015. Any discussion? Any objection? Agreed to? I put clause 7, amendment of section 15 of Act number 15 of 2015. Any discussion? Any objection? Agreed to? I put clause 8, amendment of section 18 of Act number 15 of 2015. Any discussion? Any objection? Agreed to? I put clause 9, insertion of section 18A of Act number 15 of 2015. Yes, Honorable Nekundi.
Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy Chair of the whole House Committee. I would suggest on page 7, clause 7B, instead of may, that we must insert the word must. They must not actively engage instead of may. Instead of may, we insert must. Then it will make it obligatory or mandatory. The same apply then to clause 8B. It must also be must, with the concurrence of the minister, allow a shorter period of giving intention to resign instead of may, so that it does not give ambiguity or discretionary to that. And so submit, Comrade Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nekundi. Any further discussion? Any objection?
Deputy Minister first. Deputy Minister of Finance.
Oh, sorry. Honorable Deputy Minister? It's fine. Eh?
Agreed.
So we agree to. I put clause 10, amendment of section 19 of Act number 15 of 2015. Any discussion? Any objection? Agree to. I put clause 11, amendment of section 20 of Act number 15 of 2015. Honorable Nekundi.
Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy Chairperson. Clause 11(4) there. I would suggest we replace the word money with donation, in that the board may receive any other donation apart from the cash. See, that donation, that is only curtailed to money, but the board may receive any other donation. It can receive computers or so forth, but it's not registered, it's not catered for neither in the principal act, neither in the amendment. So I just suggest that instead of money, we just put donation. And so submit.
Money received by way
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Money received by way of donation.
Money, computer.
Can we?
Can you say money?
I just want to read so that we agree that it makes sense if we read it.
Yeah.
That it says donation received by way of a donation for the benefit of the board.
For the benefit, just remove the donation. Donation received by way of, by way of
No, then it must be unless it is defined.
That is
Donation to all.
Donation received for the benefit. That is donation received for the benefit of the board.
Did you get it, Honorable Deputy Minister?
So should we then say donation received for the benefit of any board member?
No, for the board member. For the board, not the member, for the board.
What if it is for a member?
No, it's not for a member. The source not for a member, it's for the board.
But the board exists for members.
The source for the board, not for a member.
Okay. Sorry, Honorable Deputy Minister. Can you sit for a while? Honorable Nekundi, can you put it the way you...
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. See, this clause is talking about a board receiving as an structure, as an institution receiving a donation. Now, the current clause as it stands there, it only talks about money received. My suggestion would be, knowing that the board can also receive computers, it may receive a car for its operations. So it's also a donation. And so a donation is anything you receive that you are not paying for. It's a donation. Now, I would then suggest, with that understanding, that it just read, donation received for the benefit of the board may be administered on such conditions as may be agreed on between the donor and the board, but before agreeing on the conditions for the donation, the board must obtain the minister's approval of the conditions. Then, whether it's money or a car or computers, it is covered for. And it's for the benefit of the structure or the entity called the board. In this fashion, as defined, the board is defined as the Public Procurement Board. Thank you. And I shall submit.
Honorable Deputy Minister. So agreed. So agreed. Thank you. Yes.
Anna. Honorable Chairperson, can we also then define the donation to include money, computer, whatever, all the things that can be donated? Does it, how? Okay, she said it doesn't need, but I thought it may leave some.
Your mic, Honorable, that is on. Yes.
Yeah, I think the word money is what has the ambiguity. So if you say donation, donation can be in any form. It's self-explanatory. Thank you.
Okay, I repeat, we so agree. Thank you. We move. I put clause 12, amendment of section 21 of Act number 15 of 2015. Any discussion? Any objection? Agreed to? I put clause 13, amendment of section 25 of Act number 15 of 2015. Any discussion? Honorable Nekundi?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
13, you find a B there, and B there is A, B, and a B there. It says, it says satisfy the availability of funds before the commencement of each procurement process and ensure that the funds remain committed for the duration of the procurement contract. The challenge one have here, in particular in the construction, as I know, the construction, is that you will have a contract for a road that takes 5 years. Now, the funds are only available, it can only get allocated each financial year. So the second year and the third year and the fourth year is not available. We must still wait, and sometimes, like now with a project that there's no funds allocated, it's put on hold. Now, if it stands the way it is standing now, that means the budget, the parliament must then allocate funds and approve so for the duration of the 5 years that cater for that. That is the challenge one have now. And there is no way you are going to get a certificate of funds availability from finance for 5 years, of which is covering the entire project duration of a project. So I just want to find out how do we then manage that predicament within the confinement of a law and give us easiness in terms of to operationalize what is the intention here. That's really my predicament, and hope that there's some guidance on how to handle it. I guess a predicament from a practical perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Deputy Minister, I wanted her, she was standing up, I wanted to give the floor to Honorable Kawana.
She's the one who must respond.
On the question, on the very concern raised by Honorable Nekundi.
Honorable Deputy Chair, I have a predicament which is different from the predicament of my nephew here. I'm not so sure what we are doing is really correct procedurally. My past experience, and please forgive me because I was not in the house, I was attending to another official engagement outside the Commerce, so I just came. But as I know, during the second reading, honorable members will propose some amendments. Some will be accepted, some will be objected to, some will be issue of give and take. Now, those amendments now are prepared by the line minister on a yellow paper. Then when you come now to the third reading, that's when you propose and you table those amendments officially. So I'm really in a dilemma now, what we are doing now. I don't know in terms of the procedure yet. I need to be guided.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Kawana. Yes, honorable members. Honorable members, can we please listen to one another? Honorable Nekundi and Honorable Kawana, you raised the concern. However, I am made to understand that the bill was, I don't know if I use the word unfortunate, if it's correct, was brought without any amendment. And it was, we are sort of just now trying to adopt it as it is. I don't know how legally wise correct is, but we need the legal mind to guide us.
Justice. Minister of Justice
yeah. So the process seems to be now that the Honorable Minister of Justice Honorable Minister of, Deputy Minister of Finance, if we agree, can we, honorable members, please, if we agree that I'm also tend to be directed. Legal-wise, I'm also not an expert, so it should be from the legal people to advise us the way forward. There is Honorable Itete at the back, and here I have Honorable Kawana, as I requested for legal advice. I don't know whom should I give the floor now. Honorable Kawana, please. I will come back to you.
Honorable Deputy Chair, you know, the stages of bills are regulated by our rules and procedures. From first reading, second reading, committee stage. Now, what I'm saying, unless we amended the rules, what I'm saying is this. During the second reading, honorable members will propose some amendments. And I have the experience of my dear sister there, Honorable Jenda, who proposed a number of amendments when I proposed the whistleblower protection and witness protection here. So during that period, the minister or the line minister now will consider those amendments. Some of them will be accepted, some of them not. And then there's a yellow paper that is used to formally table those amendments. But before they are even tabled, they are certified by the Attorney General. That's really the procedure. Now, what we are doing now here is not really according to the rules, unfortunately. I don't know.
Okay. Thanks. Honorable members.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson of the Whole House Committee.
Yes.
I'm looking at, and I haven't applied my mind to this particular situation, and I want us to avoid practices and customs that have happened, maybe that may not be consistent with the provisions of the rules. I'm looking at Rule 46 specifically, and those that have the rules may want to go there. It talks about amendments in committee of the whole assembly. Is that this committee?
Yes.
If it is this committee, it does appear from the provisions that the only amendment that will not be allowed is one that is not consistent or who is in conflict with the principles of the bill. Those are the amendments that will not be allowed. Any amendments that are adopted at this level, the committee is entitled to amend. Okay, so let me just read the rule for posterity. The first provision says, no new clause or amendment shall be allowed which is substantially the same as one already decided in the negative by the committee, or which is inconsistent with one that has already been agreed to by the committee, unless a recommittal has taken place. It's not clear what a recommittal is. Secondly, it says amendments may be made to a clause or new clauses added, provided that they are relevant to the subject matter of the bill, and are pursuant to any instruction or are otherwise in conformity with the standing rules and orders of the assembly. In other words, firstly, Dr. Kawana, I don't know whether you will agree with me on this one, But it would appear to me at the level of the committee, amendments are allowed. The only amendments that are not allowed are those that are not consistent with the rules and orders of the Assembly. I think any of the amendments that we proposed, some up to this point, are actually not even substantive. And then it says, if an amendment is to be adopted, which is relevant to the subject matter of the bill, but is not within the long title of the bill, the committee shall amend the title accordingly and report it specially to the Assembly. We have not amended the long title of the bill. That's the first thing. We've only really been looking at what appears to be cosmetic changes, but also changes that are consistent with the long title of the bill, the subject matter of the bill. So it also then says, no clause or amendment may be moved which is in conflict with the principles of the bill as read a second time. What we are not sure of is what the principles of the bill were when it was read the second time. My view is, just from a cursory looking at these provisions of the rules, is that amendments are allowed. We just need to follow the procedure that an amendment is being proposed, it is being accepted by this committee, and that the chairperson would have to report to the Assembly that these are the amendments that have been proposed. That is what I'm thinking this particular rule means.
Yes. May I just say something, honorable members? As of now, the Attorney General did not send us any amendments. And as they are of the opinion that the bill is fine and should be passed as is. Okay. No, I just wanted to bring this to our attention so that we understand then the way forward now. Honorable Ifete.
Honorable Chairperson of the whole House Committee.
Honorable members, can we please...
Let's do the right thing. Just exactly what you have said. Exactly what Honorable Kawana has said. As we are speaking now, there is no amendments. Those amendments needed to be tabled. There is no amendments that were tabled. In the absence of the amendments, we adjourn this whole House Committee until those amendments any amendment to be tabled, they need to be certified by the AG. There is no amendments that are certified by the AG. So we suspend the whole House Committee. We sit again Tuesday. Then as a whole House Committee, the minister will go and take the amendments to the AG, and the AG certify them, because the amendment need to be certified. Then tabled. Then we agree on them. When you report to the Speaker, you even report by saying the bill is accepted with amendments. Where is the amendments currently? There is none. In the absence of them, let's suspend the House. I mean the whole House Committee.
Yeah,
and we continue with the House.
Yeah, I got your suggestion. Honorable Kawana, please, can you direct us once more again?
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chair.
Honorable members, can we listen to Honorable Kawana, please?
Constitutionally, we started with clause 1. There is absolutely no amendment made. Yes. An amendment is only made when it's tabled. That is a formal amendment which you report now to the Speaker. There's nothing. Who is a drafter here? Who is going to draft these things? Sometimes how are we going to be, in fact, procedurally, Honorable Deputy Chair, procedurally,
Yes.
even those amendments, before they are even tabled, there's a requirement that each and every member of parliament must receive. Now we don't have those things. So, okay, I wash my hands. If there's any, tomorrow there's any challenge, whatever, don't quote me in the public. You can quote me in private, but please, not in the public.
I'll not. Honorable members, I think we are all in agreement that we are not following the right procedure, and if the deputy minister may agree to say that we go back and consult the attorney general, and then we bring the right thing at the table. I think that should now address all of us concerned. Honorable Deputy Minister, please.
Hoping that we proceed and complete, and then we postpone it, then we do the tabling on Monday. Because, for example, now on this clause, for this, on Tuesday, thank you. For example, what was just asked is something that just needs clarification, doesn't need amendment. That Mr. Nokundi asked on point B in terms of the funds. So I'm just saying, now, which parts are we supposed to table the amendments? My understanding would be, we conclude the discussions, we note the amendments, and then we table on Tuesday the amendments. After consulting the Attorney General.
No, I think, Honorable Deputy Minister, you will not do justice to our contribution and so on. Let us just postpone the discussion.
No.
And then
listen to your Minister of Justice.
I'm now also between the rock and whatever. Honorable Dowsab.
The whole House Committee, I'm not disagreeing on principle in terms of what Dr. Kawana is saying. There may have been a practice that has been ongoing for many, many years and has become a custom. And we are quite okay with going along with it. Where I have a problem are two things. One, yesterday actually, Honorable Nekundi was basically booed down because he was doing what we're doing today when he should have just had a general debate. And he was actually advised that when we come to the committee stage, you can look at the specific clauses and make your amendments. Where I have a practical challenge, Chairperson, is which amendments were we supposed to table when the amendments are only made today during committee stage? So how are we, it doesn't make sense for us to have tabled amendments today when committee is only sitting on this particular bill today. My own thinking is, and I'm also not sure, maybe Dr. Kawana or any of the other people that have spoken on this is the correct procedure can guide us and refer us to the rule that they are following when they're making that point. For me, what I see should happen is at the committee stage, amendments are made on specific provisions or clauses. The line ministry is provided with an opportunity to work on those and come back and retable those additional amendments. It is only if there were absolutely no amendments today that you would have proceeded and have that bill go through the various stages that it needed to go to. What I'm imagining should happen, Chairperson, with due respect, is that the amendments that are being considered today and that the Deputy Minister or the Ministry of Finance does not have a problem accepting are the only are the amendments that you would have reported to and that would then be considered for tabling at a later stage. I don't know whether it's Tuesday or not. But I cannot imagine that we can have a situation where amendments would have come. Where would the discussion have taken place of those amendments that we think should have been before us today? So I don't think that was the intention of the rule when it was considered. But the second reading was considered to be a general debate. So, yes, in fact...
Are we proceeding on yes, Honorable Kawana.
With the concurrence of the House, because we need really to do justice to this bill, and our people really are suffering because of the rigidity of this bill. Our youth are suffering, our women, our mothers are suffering. Because this bill, as you are aware, Honorable Member, reserves certain contracts to our youth, certain contracts to our mothers. Now, maybe what we can do, let's go through the bill. Where we agree, we note. Where there are amendments, we note. But those amendments must be formally, formally tabled by the line minister. And each and every member here must be provided with those amendments. Then we can go forward along those lines. I shall submit.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kawana. I think we are all in agreement, and let us proceed. Yes, Honorable Ojo.
Thank you very much. I had my hand up for a while. I don't make noise. I just put
Sorry
the cursor
for
on.
that.
Yeah, but I'm in agreement with Honorable Kawana, because what we are actually doing here, when we amend the amendment to the Act, it's going to have legal implications, and the legal implications have to be endorsed properly by the Attorney General. And that's why when there is a legal case of some beating or something going on, this law we are amending has to have the strength to support what it is we are doing. So I thought maybe what we could have done is to regard this discussion as the discussion before the actual amendment presentation clause by clause, so that we will go through the bill, and then once we have done all the noting like being talked about, if we had time, but if we could make time, so because we are under pressure to make sure that this bill is moved, we can consider this session as a session before the amendments, and the noting will take place, and where there are amendments, they will be noted on the yellow page by the line ministry. They will be subjected to the scrutiny of the drafter of the bill, who is in the Attorney General's office, and then it's brought back here on Tuesday with amendments that will be presented, and where there are agreements, it will be integrated into the amendment bill. That should have been my suggestion, Chairperson of the whole House Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ojo. Honorable Ndida. Dinda.
Honorable Chairperson of the whole House Committee, we are making amendments on amendments. I really don't understand. It's amendment on an amendment. We first need to approve the amendments that is done before you can make another amendment. So it really doesn't make sense to say continue as we are doing it now. It's wrong. We cannot make something which is wrong to be right. Let's go back to the drawing board, find out from the Attorney General the procedure needs to be done, and let's do the thing from the beginning the right way. You cannot make an amendment on an amendment. It doesn't work like that. Because that amendment was not tabled to you, so we cannot make another amendment on something which was not approved. Thank you.
Just
Honorable members, I think we have reached the consensus on the way forward, and the time is also against us. We just report progress and ask for leave for us to sit again on Tuesday. What is it? It's time we are.
We are still in the whole House committee. We should not conclude this third reading. We should suspend it. Then it will be recorded that there was no third reading yet. Then we will have it. Now, if we conclude it and you report it to the chair, what is the progress? Parliament does not allow for a fourth reading. So we suspend this one, then we will come again from fresh. Yes. We can suspend it and we go back to the second reading. And discuss further and have amendment. But don't conclude it. Suspend it before we conclude it.
Honorable members, I'm not concluding. I'm just reporting that we suspend with progress, that we continue again with the same discussion. Honorable Speaker, I report progress and ask leave to sit again.
Okay, honorable members, yeah, I should think progress it means, although it was not discussed, it means the committee stage has been postponed for consultation between the line ministry and the mover of those amendments. If the line ministry agrees to those amendments, then she forwarded to the Attorney General for signature, and then they will come here in a yellow paper as it was advised by Dr. Pawana. But if the line ministry explains and she doesn't agree, she has got the right to do that. So on Tuesday, we can start ab initio again from the start with that understanding. Do you understand that? Yes. Suppose all the amendments supposed to be written in a yellow paper formally, but provided the line ministry agree, and if he disagree, she stated the reason for disagreement. Yes, Honorable Anna, sorry.
We are disagreeing because this is Honorable Nekundi might not be the only one who wants to propose amendments to the bill. The right thing is to say we suspend and we go back to the correct reading, where we propose amendments on the floor of Parliament, after which it's go to AG and then it's go back for adoption. Otherwise, if we say they are going to discuss alone there, there could be other people who have wanted to make contributions.
What I'm saying, we have done away with the second reading. Correct? We understand that? The second reading is done away with. Yeah? Yesterday. Who has shut you down? The second reading was, and I agree, I give him permission. Honorable Anne Ivonoka, I give him yes, my predecessor. Nengo, yes. But you
It is experience which I'm telling you. Dr. Kawana is right.
He's right.
Dienda is right.
Yes.
Comrades, these things are legal things. If you use your eye, open your eye and see very far. See the picture there. Seniors are not there. Soon will be taken to court by doing things illegally. Is what we are trying to initiate. And we should stop this mentality.
Yeah.
We should stop it. Let's follow the procedure, how we're doing it, simple and short. Yeah. Let the Honorable Deputy Minister adjourn and give us a date. She can give us even 2 to 3 days or 4 days, consulting the AG there.
Yeah.
Then she'll come back with the amendments which was done already. You don't make amendments here again. For the second time, I was chairing that, that's why I'm talking with experience. What do you want, you people? Definitely something else. Let's not sabotage ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah,
Let's
you are right.
just go.
My son, you are correct. Meaning the amendment is coming from the debate of the second reading. And I emphasize, the second reading has already been concluded. Yes? Those people who are not there, it has already been concluded, who are at the committee stage. And the Honorable Deputy Minister, she's in charge of these things. She has noted everything which was done, which was said by everybody. And I emphasize and I repeat, let's postpone it for the committee stage, for the line ministry to look at the comment. You can say, Honorable, so agree or disagree. Those who agree, the amendment, as Comrade Dr. Kawana has stated, it should be in a yellow paper certified by the AG. Yeah. With this, the House is adjourned.